Australia has not been what I had expected. We have spent the past 2.5 weeks traveling around to different cities along the coast and into the outback. What struck me the most are how unique each place has been and the way our group of 35 has progressed throughout this trip. Our first stop was in Sydney. Before coming to Sydney, I pictured it as very urban and modern. But after living in the heart of Sydney for 3 days, I realized Sydney also has a very historical feel to it down in the area known as the Rocks. Sydney was where we first became introduced to the Aboriginal way of life from our time spent with Margaret. From a group perspective, this is where our journey began as we learned a little bit about each other from our digital introductions and had our first room assignments with people we had never met. Our next stop on this whirlwind of a trip was Noosa. We spent an amazing Christmas here in one of the nicest accommodations we would experience throughout the trip. Here we learned about the importance of Noosa's biosphere and visited Noosa's National Park. When visiting the National Park and reaching Hell's Gates, we pondered the meaning of progress and what it would mean for the National Park. Some thought more people in the park would be a good thing, because it would open their eyes to the amazing wildlife that needs to be preserved, while others were not in favor, thinking it would cause more development to accommodate these additional visitors. This moment of reflection made me realize that progress doesn't always have to be synonymous with development. I found myself being in favor of not allowing additional visitors for fear of more development. While in Noosa, I roomed with 2 people from different backgrounds and started to become more comfortable with worldviews different than my own. After Noosa, we hopped on a tiny plane and traveled to Lady Elliot Island in the Great Barrier Reef. On Lady Elliot, we snorkeled with manta-rays and green turtles and learned about the status of the reef and what can be done to protect the world's largest underwater ecosystem. From birds pooping on us to staying up late and watching a turtle lay her eggs, our group of 35 began to become close friends by interacting and learning more about each other. Lady Elliot was by far one of the most beautiful places that I have ever been to. Our next destination took us on a 10-hour coach ride to Carnarvon Gorge in the Australian outback. We lived in tents with no air conditioning in the midsummer heat, with spiders and grasshoppers enjoying our tents as much as us. Here is where our group truly became a team, helping one another climb over logs and up steep mountains. If it weren't for Austin and Sawyer, I definitely would have not made it up and over the many rocks and logs on our first hike. On our final hike, the accomplishment that we all felt when we looked out over Balloon Bluff was extremely self-satisfying, and the view was breathtaking. I had never done a hike that taxing and thought our group did an amazing job supporting one another. We concluded our stay in Brisbane, where we had a great ending to an amazing trip. Looking back on these past 2 weeks, I have developed relationships with people that I never would have. When I think of progress and the time I spent in Australia, I think of being a shy girl from a small town, nervous to be interacting and living with so many strangers. However, throughout our journey through Australia, these 34 other students with all different personalities and backgrounds became people I could relate to and bounce ideas off of instead of simply just making small talk with. I am so grateful for the people and all the amazing memories I have made on this trip.